At 2:11 in the morning, a man was declared dead in a city hospital. No name, no family, no pulse. 20 minutes later, a security camera recorded him sitting upright in his bed. He didn't scream. He didn't thrash. He didn't ask for help. He only asked one question: how many of them are here? Every witness told a different story. Every report contradicted the last. And all of them agreed on one thing: whatever walked out of that room was not supposed to come back. Hospitals are supposed to be places of noise. Beeping monitors, rolling carts, shoes squeaking on polished floors, the low murmur of voices that never quite stops, even at 3 in the morning. But St. Jude Memorial had another sound, one most people never noticed: a hollow sound. The way a long corridor answered your footsteps half a second too late. The way an elevator door closed with a sigh instead of a click. The way some rooms seemed to absorb noise, as if the walls themselves were listening. For 40 years, the hospital had been built, expanded, renovated, and partially abandoned in layers. New wings grew over old foundations. New paint hid old stains. New equipment was bolted to floors that still remembered other machines. And every person who worked there had their own explanation for why St. Jude felt wrong. Some said it was because too many people had died there. Some said it was because too many had lived when they should not have. Some said nothing at all, but avoided the East Wing after midnight. This is not a story about a monster that jumps out of the dark. It is a story about a body that refused to stay a body, and about the people who each saw something different when it began to move. Mara Collins had worked the night shift for 11 years. She trusted routines more than people. At 12:30 a.m., she checked the ICU vitals. At 1 a.m., she refilled 4 bags. At 1:45 a.m., she walked the East Wing, even though administration said it was unnecessary. She did this because patterns kept you sane, and because the East Wing bothered her. That wing had been scheduled for demolition years ago, but budget delays turned temporary storage into permanent limbo. Old rooms were used for overflow. Old equipment sat unplugged along the walls. Old charts gathered dust in unlocked cabinets. At 2:07 a.m., Mara signed out a body from room E17. Male. Estimated age mid-60s. No ID. No next of kin. Found unresponsive in a bus station bathroom. Declared dead on arrival. The body was transferred to temporary holding because the morgue elevator was under maintenance. Mara wheeled the gurney herself. She remembered 2 things clearly. First, the man's eyes were closed, but not fully. Just enough to show a thin line of white. Second, his hands were warm. She told herself that post-mortem warmth sometimes lingered. She signed the intake form. Time of placement, 2:11 a.m. At 2:24 a.m., while updating charts at the nurse's station, she heard the sound. Not a scream. A cough. Low, wet, controlled, from the direction of the East Wing. She stood up immediately. Hospitals had rules about sounds like that, and about bodies that were not supposed to make them. Ethan Moore had been awake for 36 hours. He had learned that exhaustion created hallucinations, shadows that moved when they should not, sounds that came from vents, pipes, or inside your own skull. At 2:25 a.m., he was rechecking lab results in a side office near the East Wing when he heard a stretcher wheel scrape the wall. That by itself meant nothing, but the hallway camera feed on his monitor flickered, just for a second, then showed something that made him lean closer. Room E17's door was open. He was sure it had been closed earlier. On the grainy black and white feed, he saw a figure sitting upright on the gurney, not standing, not falling, sitting, perfectly still. Ethan's first thought was simple and professional. They mispronounced him. The second thought came slower, heavier. No one sits up like that after being dead for 40 minutes. He rewound the feed. In the earlier frame, the body was lying flat. Then the screen flickered, and the next frame showed the body upright. No movement in between, just different. Ethan did not call it a miracle. He called it an error. He printed the timestamp and went to find a nurse. Leon Watkins had worked security for 20 years. He believed in practical explanations. Faulty cameras, sleep-deprived staff, old buildings that made strange noises when temperatures changed. At 2:31 a.m., dispatch sent him to the East Wing for a possible unauthorized movement. He carried a flashlight and a radio. The hallway lights were dimmed to half power. When he reached room E17, the door was closed. That already contradicted the report. He opened it. The gurney was empty. The straps lay unbuckled. The sheet was folded neatly at the foot of the bed. Leon felt a small, familiar tightening in his chest. Bodies did not unstrap themselves. He stepped back into the hallway and saw wet footprints, bare, leading away from the room. He followed them slowly. They did not drip blood. They did not leave mud. They were simply damp impressions, fading as they went, as if the floor itself was drying them away. They led toward the old surgical theater, the one scheduled for demolition, the one no one used anymore. Mrs. Eleanor Pike had been awake since 1:50 a.m. Pain did that. So did loneliness. From her bed in Ward C, she could see the end of the east corridor through a glass partition. At 2:34 a.m., she saw a man walking, slowly, naked except for a hospital sheet draped over his shoulders. She did not scream. She thought he was a confused patient, but she noticed 3 details that unsettled her. He did not blink. He did not sway when he walked, and his feet did not make any sound. He stopped at the end of the corridor, turned his head, and looked directly at her. She would later swear that he smiled, not with kindness, with recognition. Then he walked into the darkness of the closed wing. Dr. Samuel Reed believed in death. He had pronounced over 4,000 people dead. He had signed forms, held watches to wrists, listened to silence with a stethoscope. When he arrived at the East Wing at 2:40 a.m., he already had a diagnosis ready: catalepsy, mispronouncement, rare but documented. Until he saw the surgical theater. The old room smelled of disinfectant and dust. The body lay on the central operating table, positioned neatly, hands folded, eyes open. Dr. Reed checked for a pulse. There was one, slow, shallow, but undeniably there. Then the man spoke, not loudly, not dramatically. He said, "I am not finished yet." Dr. Reed would later insist that this was not threatening. It was apologetic, as if the man were explaining an inconvenience. What happened next depends on who you believe. Mara said the man stood without assistance. Ethan said he never stood at all, only appeared closer every time he blinked. Leon said the hallway cameras shut down as he passed. Mrs. Pike said the man never left the East Wing after that. Dr. Reed said the heart monitor never registered a normal rhythm, only noise. The man was moved to isolation, sedated, restrained, observed. He did not struggle. He did not panic. He only asked quiet questions. What time is it now? Who brought me back? How many of them are here? When asked who them were, he did not answer. At 4:12 a.m., he went into cardiac arrest. This time, there was no mistake. They tried for 23 minutes, then stopped. Time of death, 4:35 a.m. The body did not move again. The official report listed a mispronouncement of death, followed by brief resuscitation. The camera malfunction was blamed on old wiring. The footprints were dismissed as condensation. The cough was never explained. But every person involved changed afterward. Mara transferred to day shift. Ethan quit medicine entirely. Leon refused to patrol the East Wing. Mrs. Pike requested a private room with no view of the corridor. Dr. Reed retired within the year. Each of them told the story differently. Mara believed the man had woken too early. Ethan believed something had overwritten reality between two frames of video. Leon believed the man had never been in room E17 at all. Mrs. Pike believed she had seen someone who did not belong among the living. Dr. Reed believed something else entirely. Before he died, he wrote a single sentence in a private journal. Some people do not come back from death. Some people bring something with them. Years later, St. Jude Memorial was finally demolished. During excavation, workers found a sealed sub-basement beneath the East Wing. Inside was an operating room older than the building itself, with one table and scratch marks on the walls. No bodies were found. No records explained its existence. If you hear this story as a medical error, you will believe it was a rare mistake. If you hear it as a ghost story, you will believe the dead walked again. If you hear it as a psychological case, you will believe exhaustion created a shared delusion. But there is one detail everyone agrees on. In the final autopsy, the man's lungs contained air, fresh air, from a place he could not have reached. And in his throat, they found traces of dust. The same dust later found in the sealed sub-basement, meaning one of three things must be true. Either the hospital once held places no one remembered, or the man went somewhere after dying and came back through the wrong door, or he had never truly left at all. And if you work late in a hospital and hear a quiet cough from a closed wing, you will decide for yourself which version scares you most.